So in this review, I will try to not spoil the plot too much and just go mainly through the aesthetics, the ups and downs, and I will do a more thorough breakdown elsewhere. So overall, what do I think? I think it was pretty good. The people who really liked it sort of went into the 8 to 9 range. People who really disliked it went with a 5 and 6 range. I think this is legitimately somewhere between 7 to 7.5 for the first episode. I myself would give it a higher score, but I do think to be balanced, there were a few lore violations that I thought were not necessary. They do have a lot of legal restrictions, but still, some things didn't feel quite right to me. I'm gonna have to do more research. On the whole, I think it's balanced because there was a lot, and I do mean a lot of religious imagery and religious iconography. There is a lot of Christianity in this first episode, and that is consistent in the second episode. And I thought that's very important. Like it or not, Tolkien was a Catholic. He was very steeped in Catholicism. So I think they did a good job of balancing out sort of modern fantasy tropes with a lot of religious Christian imagery, which is very vital to the mythology. But now let's get to the story itself and the plot, which I agree is very slow. So you can look at it two ways. Did you think it was too slow for this kind of story? No. This is a very large mythology, and they are cutting an insane amount of material. So even though they simplified a lot, there's a lot they need to get to. I understood that. I understand some people were frustrated, but I didn't feel it was really boring. They have actually a lot of action scenes spread out through the entire first episode. I guess it's the way the characters are being introduced, how we're becoming familiar with them. We're not spending enough time to understand why it's so vital they're doing what they're doing. So the main story is focused on Galadriel. She's very set on hunting orcs and finding Sauron once and for all and destroying him, but she's meeting a lot of skepticism with Elrond, her brother, and Gil-galad. So that's the basis of the main plot is where is Sauron? Why are people not being more alert? I will note in the books, Elrond is very aware Sauron is a serious threat. So here they're changing him a little bit, where he seems a little slow and cautious, and he wants Galadriel to calm down. A lot of people were criticizing Galadriel for just being too stern, but given the seriousness of what happened with Morgoth, basically destroying a huge amount of Middle Earth, it makes sense she's acting the way she does. I will say, though, the conclusion I thought was very weak. If you've seen the trailers, you'll be spoiled. If you haven't seen the trailers, please don't see them. You will get a lot out of the ending. I thought the music was weak. The music overall was insanely strong, but towards the end, I thought they went overboard. I think it would have been better if they pulled back a little bit. And Galadriel does something, she makes a critical choice. It makes sense in terms of story, but I thought it was really silly. And it's very beautiful. The whole episode is insanely gorgeous, but I did think what she did, it came off a little silly, and it's also pretty silly in episode 2. I'll just say when she does a certain motion, and I'll just say she makes a huge jump, I'm like, that didn't come off too well. In terms of the other major characters, I think they came off a little bit stronger, especially Bronwyn and her, quote, forbidden love with, quote unquote, the Black Elf. The actor is actually Hispanic. He's not black, but we'll put that aside. That was actually far better done than I would have expected. They're playing into some silly CW tropes. If you like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I do, you won't have a problem there. But I think Buffy was inferior to Angel, where they did have a lot of romance, but I think they were done much better. It's my opinion. It didn't become too cringy. In fact, the dialogue here, I think, overall was pretty strong. It's just not clear where we're going with this. It seems Bronwyn is concerned with orcs in the area. She's very troubled. Meanwhile, there's kind of politics with the elves of what they should do. I think it was comprehensible, but again, you wonder what the payoff is. So that was a little weird. Also, her son Theo, I didn't think the child actor was annoying. I'm just wondering why are they keeping it mysterious who the father is? I thought that was kind of a needless mystery they're keeping in the background. But he, I think, will become very critical. In fact, I think he will become the key to finding Sauron. That's my guess at this moment. They're setting up a lot of little mysteries. And as far as the other characters, we don't, I think, spend enough time with them. And when we do spend time with them, I thought it was not well spent. So Nori is becoming a fan favorite because he's very cute. She feels a lot like Bilbo and Frodo. I will make this note, which even I think book readers get wrong, which is Bilbo did not want to go on the adventure, as far as I remember, with the Hobbit. He was very, very reluctant. He's forced to go onto the adventure. Frodo, I admit, is more of a question mark. So I think Nori is imitating Frodo more than Bilbo. People think, oh, she's just Bilbo number two. I don't think she is. So she becomes critical in finding a certain person. And I thought her personality was fine, but they leaned in way too much to the Hobbits being comedic. They are, but they're also very serious. And also, the whole culture of the Hobbits felt a little confusing because Lenny Henry, who I want to admit, I do not like this person. I don't like his politics. I don't like what he's been saying. But he's only in here a little bit. I thought it was balanced the way he's reading these texts. I'm sure that'll come up later. I thought he was fine. It was measured, but they leaned in on too much comedy because as much as there is, quote, they're doing their own thing, there is a lot of Jacksonian moments throughout this entire first episode. So if you do love Peter Jackson and love the Hobbit films and love the Lord of the Rings films, I'm not sure what you'd be angry at because they have an insane number of Easter eggs to Tolkien and to Peter Jackson. But I think the Hobbits, they're following the Peter Jackson formula. I didn't like that, but I understood their role in the story. So it's not overwhelming if you've seen the trailers and are familiar with some of the marketing. If you have not seen that, then yes, it may feel a little overwhelming, but you will get a lot out of re-seeing the first episode. I did like it a lot. It was very gorgeously shot, and it was much better directed than I expected because the director did one of the Jurassic Park films, and let me just say there I was kind of disappointed because the characters just run too fast, they're screaming all the time. It's just a lot of fast editing and it's very incomprehensible. That's not the case here. There is some moments where the editing was a little too quick or bizarre decisions, but overall I thought this was, yes, a little slow, but well paced for what the story that they're doing and where they're going with it. I'm going to give it a strong 7.25. It's a pretty strong start. There are, yes, quite a few canonical violations you could get really upset about. Some of them are minor, some of them are major, but a lot of them are fairly minor. But again, we're going to have to wait for what Galadriel's story is because it is broadly canonical, but they're making it a much more personal story, whereas I remember it from the books as being just part of the larger mythology. I'm sure she does actually hate Sauron. Why wouldn't you? But her making it such a personal vendetta felt a little bizarre. So a strong start, but somewhat uneven. The strongest parts were the music. That was very consistent and very good throughout three-fourths of the entire episode. The dialogue was more uneven, but where it needed to be strong, I thought it was strong. The comedy was very weak. I thought it was very needless, but they kept going back to that. There's an early flashback to a young Galadriel that wasn't necessary, but you will get, I think, a lot out of the world building. And yes, they're making some simplification with what happened with Morgoth and Sauron. I'll just say that much. And there we are with the first episode of Rings of Power. A promising start, but we're going to have to see where they're going with this.